Hi everyone. In this recording, we are continuing with defining the spread, intensity, and strength of your emotions. So, in the previous newsletter, in relation to this point, I asked you to firstly identify the spread of your emotions, the spread being whether the emotion was more concentrated and centralized in your solar plexus, or whether the emotion, just instantaneously, without warning, just immediately spread throughout your entire body and taking over your thoughts, your conscience, and that would lead to the sudden, unexpected saying or doing of things that you would tend to later regret. Right. So essentially, the spread being is the emotion more concentrated in a specific area, or does it immediately trigger and activate it and essentially overwhelm you? Okay. So it was to identify the spread, and then to identify the intensity that you had to define between 1 and 10, 1 being less severe, 10 being most severe, and the intensity, the extent to which, the emotion affects your body, how strong is it, let's call it the strength of the energy itself. That's the intensity with which it punches you in yourself and your body. Like sometimes you feel an emotion that feels like there's just a feather that's slightly brushing over your skin, and sometimes there's an emotion that feels like it's an actual fist that's punching you in your solar plexus. Okay, so that being the intensity, and then the third one, the strength or the charge of the energy. How overpowering is it in overwhelming your thoughts and your general experience of yourself? Does it change the person that you are in a given moment? Okay, but overall, everyone, to do, if you need a refresher, to access that recording just once again and listen through it. In this recording, we are going to continue with how identifying and getting to know this spread, intensity, and strength of your emotions can assist and support you with preventative measures in your everyday life, and establish and start that practical process of establishing an awareness sensitivity in your relationship with your body. I mean, there's so many of us that want to change, that know, you, even just if you have a look at those moments in your everyday life where you do things, you say things, where you don't do things and you don't say things, and there are these emotions that's preventing you in those moments from doing, saying, and being and acting and changing that which, a deep part of you knows would be best for you or another or your future, but you don't. And you live with that pit in your stomach of sorrow, regret, mourning, just that bad, distasteful, shitty, to be frank, experience inside yourself. So, here's a technique that can really assist and support you to finally, once and for all, change the things that you've always wanted to change about yourself in the real-time moments in your everyday life. Change is most effective and impactful in the real-time moments in your everyday life, in that real moment where you can feel, an emotion coming up, to take that power inside yourself and say, no more, till here no further. I will not accept and allow this emotional state that has overpowered me for all these years to take control of this moment. I'm stepping up, I'm stepping in, and I'm dictating who I am to be in this moment. No more is my emotions going to take the best of me. No more am I going to accept and allow myself to live with this guilt, this sorrow, regret, and shame of me not being the self that I know I can be. So it's essentially that voice that will start coming through inside yourself as a living statement that you make for yourself in the moments when you can start feeling those emotions are attempting to or trying to take over a moment. And it's not to, be angry at your own emotions, because, emotions are a part of us. It is you. It's just your emotions have always stood in the stead of you, meaning you on an awareness of self level have never stood up to change. So therefore, what's going to keep on playing out in moments in your life is your past patterns, the things that you've always lived over and over and over again. But those are the things that you can change. And I tell you, the best moments to change is in the moment where you see, that pattern or emotion that you want to change. It's not going to be as effective to only change, in the middle of the night, and then you've got these visions of how you're going to change the next morning when you wake up. But it never happens, because there's so many other, subconscious and unconscious sabotaging patterns that we have that prevent us from actually moving into real change the next day. That's where you have to move, in the moments where it feels like it's the most difficult. That's where it's like that same pattern is at its greatest weakness, because it's at its greatest potency, an emotion, the moment it's here and it's real and you feel it and you're sensitive and you're in it. So when you discharge it in that moment and decide to change, that's where it'll go through its greatest fall. Meaning, an example is here, so just practically to show you how I've also worked through this as a practical example. Okay, what I've done in this month is define that spread of energy that comes through me, and it's an interesting one. It's more a listlessness, an apathy, a tiredness that is just suddenly here, boom, bam, in a moment, where I am motivated and driven for a little bit of my day in relation to something, but in the next moment I feel apathetic, I feel drained, I feel depressed, I feel like I just don't want to do everything that I wanted to or intended to do for the rest of my days, for the rest of the day. And it's again that I just want to give up and close myself in a room and just be unheard of for the rest of the day. So it's like an immediate imprint of energy that I become, but it's even beyond an energy. It's more like a state I become. So the spread of the energy was all the way into my very being or spirit, my experience of myself. The intensity of it extreme, because it just completely takes over my entire body. And the strength of it is almost impossible to place a number on, because it just takes over my thinking, my experience, my body, and just places me in the zombified state. So from here, like, okay, I've got to have a look at when this little bugger starts creeping in. Because even though we sometimes feel like an energy is wham, bam, here, suddenly, unexpectedly, and the spread is just taking over so completely and absolutely, it actually does creep up and creep in. So I said to myself, okay, the next day I'm going to see, where does this thing start coming at me that I'm not noticing it enough to actually prevent it. And then the next day I started observing more meticulously where my thoughts are going, where my inner dialogue is going, my body language, things like that. And I really started noticing these little inner voices coming up in me of, oh, you can do that later. How about rather doing this now? You would maybe feel better. This would be more relaxing to do now. No, do that a bit later on in the day. So it's like that subtle slight talk of, no, it's fine, do it a bit later, do this thing first, it's a bit more pleasurable. How about, eating first than doing this recording now, or that now, or that document, or get to this project or this part of the project, first eat and everything like that, when all that was needed was maybe 10-15 minutes of attention to something, but I do what I want to do rather than a 15 minutes I could give. And then what happens is I usually do what I wanted to do, and then something else comes in the way, and then I never get to what I wanted to do in the first place. So it was like those things that would come up, and my preferences and my likes and my desires would be placed above what I practically needed to do. And that's where I started giving my power away, and that disempowerment in myself led to that immediate state activation inside myself. Even if I act on it that one moment, that whole state starts activating, and then it's like I'm done for the rest of my day. So when I noticed that inner dialogue come up, I was like, no. You know what? Now, just because that point came up, I'm not only going to do this one thing, I'm going to do another thing and get that done before I do what I wanted to do. Okay, so again, you've got to play with yourself with ways and methods and techniques of how to identify these extensive energies that come up inside